Hello YouTube, welcome to another Workbench video here on my model railway channel. Some of you might be aware now that my layout has now been dismantled, so unfortunately there won't be any running trains or model railway videos as such. So I thought instead I'll be doing once again some skill based videos in terms of doing kits, modifying your locos, like the A1 to A1X Stepney video, but I thought I'd cover this subject, which is etched kits. I'm going to try and show you all the way through this etched kit and show you how easy or difficult it is and what equipment you will need. So I often get asked, what is the first kit you would suggest I have a go at? So I will show you the two of mine, which you can see in the shot here. These are both from the Roxey Mouldings range. So we have an All First and a Break Third. The Break Third is a more recent one. Now you don't have to go to town and line them all out like I have, but these are quite simple and straightforward to build and put together. They're really nice etches and I can only recommend them. So these will cost about £38 around that with the wheels included. So they're not massively expensive, but they're a good starting point to start etched brass kit building. So here we have a new kit which I purchased recently from Roxey Mouldings, and this one is an All Third, as I discovered they were restoring one on the railway at the Bluebell when I visited, so I thought I'll buy another. So this is the next one, and so we'll have a look in the kit and what it comes with. So let's have a look what you actually get in this box. So you get quite a lot of packaging. You have your wheels with bearings as well. You have a moulded roof, which is probably done by heat over a mould. You have to cut this down and glue it on the top of your model. So this is basically plastic card or styrene sheet. You also have all your castings. Now this covers Westinghouse air pump, air braked stock, also vacuum. You've also got your springs in there as well as the buffers, screws, and also the oil tops for the roof. You also got the vacuum pipe or air pipe in there as well. So the etches, which are all wrapped up in tissue paper. You have some brass wire, some plastic card for the floor, and you have the side etches for the kit. So you've got the partitions for two sides, you've got the various axle boxes which you can use, the compensated ones or just the fixed. And you've got the two ends of the coach. There's two layers of this etch. You also get the handrails, brakes, and all the rigging underneath as well. I tend to use my own handrails, which I've got a little jig made up how to use. I've just got an offcut here of what the other part looks like. So you can see all the hand grab or grab handles, sorry, to put on the carriage size, but I don't use these. I just use wire, which I've bent round. Then you also have the instructions, which are important. They're quite well put together. You also got some window clear acetate sheet to put on the windows. You've got all the detail of parts and the full instructions, as well as diagrams. But the instructions are quite clear and easy to put together. So if you haven't seen my soldering brass already guide, then that's on YouTube as well if you look down my Workbench playlist. If not, I'll go through the tools to do this next. So I thought I'd just take you through the equipment which I generally use to build these brass kits, so locomotives and carriages, which we're doing right now. So to begin with, I use a 25 watt Antec soldering iron. You can use hotter if you wish. Generally the bigger the kit, the bigger and thicker bits of brass you will need a hotter iron for to get it up to temperature. I find 25 watt just about okay, it can just about manage, so if you want to be safe, go for 30. The more power, the hotter they are. I would also recommend a 15 watt iron to do the white metal parts which you want to solder on as well. After that we'll go through the solder. I have 188-degree solder, which is for stronger joints. We also have 145-degree solder, which you can use for detailed parts, smaller parts, and some lamination of brass parts onto brass as well. Also lower temperature, I think it's about 70-degree, which you use 15 watt iron for. This is for white metal, and all the solder is from Eileen's Emporium. To work with the brass as well, you need to clean it, so I have a fiberglass brush pen to clean the material with, and also flux. You can also get this from Eileen's Emporium as well. This is a Gauge Master brand which has acid, so it really bites into the brass. To clean and to cut off the parts of the kit, I have some clippers here, and also craft knife. And to clean them up, obviously you'll need some files. I use the needle file. Now also, if you may or may not know, carriages have something what's called a tumble home, which is where the lower half or lower panels of the carriage bend inwards. And I've made this jig up, which is a piece of a skirting board actually, and a piece of hardwood on the front, plus some bolts and some wing nuts, and you clamp it in between these two and bend the bottom half of the carriage over, therefore creating your tumble home. And that's how I do it anyway. You may have your own methods or know of a different way, but that's how I make all the parts that I need. So part one of the build will focus on the chassis. So the chassis is here on this fret. You can see it down the bottom here. You need to cut out the windows, put them to a safe place, or put them in a safe place so you can find them again. And we'll remove this with a sharp knife. And there's only a few tabs around here, so just quickly but safely cut them away. What we'll do is we'll cut out the windows as well by keeping them all in one piece. So I'll put those to one side in the box for the next bit. So what that will need now is a file down and clean around the edges where we've just cut this off from the fret. So now they've been cleaned up, all the edges that we've cut away, we're on to the next piece. Now you can see on the sole bars on the edges here, you can see there's some indentations for where rivets would be. And on the other side of course there's absolutely nothing. So in the drawings and in the instructions, what we have to do is use a blunt scriber, or you can also use a compass from a mathematics kit or something, and using a piece of card or a reasonably soft craft mat, you can just go around and put that in the hole, pressing down quite firmly, which will bring out the rivet detail on the other side. Just do this one quickly. Not sure if you can see that, but hopefully in the light you can. So we have the rivet detail on the sole bars. Now I just have to do that another 3 times, and that will complete that section. So that's all four done. You can see there the edge is still pretty straight. So the next piece I have to do is basically I have to now bend these sole bars down. Then also I have to bend the W irons which holds the wheels in here. Now there is an option for compensation on these, but I don't particularly want that in this, so I'm just going to stick with good old simple W irons on the actual edge. Okay, so I've done one side just so you can see what you have to do. So you have to bend the outside over, which then forms a nice 90-degree angle. Then you have to also push from the back the W irons up and over, and once you have these in a suitable position where you're happy with it, you can then clean this with your fiberglass brush. Then you can run some flux down there and some solder, which will then strengthen that joint and keep it rock solid. Then after you've done this, we'll move on to the buffer beams. Right, so you join me back after adding the headstocks on the end of the chassis, which you can see just here, and also on the end. You can also see I've folded in the ends on the headstocks as well and soldered them in place. So that's ready for the next stage. This is quite a few months down the line from where I started off from doing the headstocks, because I had a lot of other projects in the way. Piece doesn't last forever. So the next step on the instructions is C4, which is take the footboards. If modelling a close coupled set, they should be cut back to the inner end of a rectangular cutout. So that's this cutout here on the side, you can see. I'm just going for the normal type, so not close coupled, just a standard. So the two footboards are there together on the edge. These have been cut out and cleaned up with a needle file, and basically what you will need to do is you'll need to fold over the tabs one way. These will hold it behind the actual side or sole bars on the side of the carriage chassis. You've also got these small little tabs which fold up and go onto the front of the sole bar, so it sort of holds itself while you're kind of soldering the footstep in place. So I'll do that just now and show you one without the other. So you can see I've soldered one on, and you can see small locators at the front, which are the small hangers which hold it onto the front of the sole bar. And flipping it over, you can see the other ones on the back, which have been soldered in to their little slots. You can see on the side here there are small slots along the sole bar where the step boards actually fit. You can see on this one I've folded up the little anchors on the side here, one there, that feel on the front, and these are the small tabs which you solder the big ones behind and the small ones in front. So on to the next part, which is C5, and this basically is in regards to the braking systems. Now these carriages were close coupled occasionally, and some had no brakes and others had air brakes, which is the London Brighton South Coast main braking system. But because I model preservation, I want to do vacuum brakes. Now there's no castings in the box for that, so I'm going to have to buy in a casting or a casting set of some vacuum cylinders and reservoir tanks, etc., which I usually get from MJT. But if you are going for air brakes, you will need to solder a piece of brass across this hole where you can mount the castings for the Westinghouse brake pump, which are in here. You can see the air tanks in here, as well as the actuator, which is just about there. And you solder them on the piece of brass, which you will solder across here. Now I'm not going to do that, as I say, because I'm doing vacuum braked, and that comes with a piece of brass which I can stick across here. And usually as well I add a small battery box as well. So skipping ahead, while I haven't got the braking systems or the braking castings, we'll move on to C6, which is the brake shoes, which are number 3 and number 4 on the etch. And I'll just show you on the etch here. These are the brake shoes here, and these will locate into slots in the chassis, and I've added 2 already, which you can see here. There are the brake blocks, and you can see the 2 small holes in line with the wheels when they're there, where they fit. Clean them up, solder them in, and you have some brake blocks. So I'll add the other ones of these, and then we'll go on to C7. So moving on from instruction C6, you can see all the brakes added on the chassis now. These still need fine adjustment, which I will go into. So C7, the next part, is basically running gear, axle boxes, bearings, wheels and springs. That will be springs going on to C8, but similar sort of thing. So we need to check our bearings, which I have ordered with the kit, and the wheels with the kit. These come from Roxey Mouldings, so they're the right ones for this carriage. These are the axle boxes here. You do get a spare or 2. You do need to drill out a hole on the back, which these ones do not have any holes whatsoever on them, so they need to be drilled. Also have 4 springs. I think you might get a spare with this as well. So these can either be glued on, or they can be soldered on with white metal solder or a low melt solder. I believe you need a 15-watt iron for that, and they solder on just between the W iron here and the small gap behind or in front of it. And then after that you will be working on the brake setup as well, so you can adjust the brake shoes, making sure they are close but not too close. Also, while you're soldering around all these metal parts, do be aware that you don't get any flux on the wheels themselves, because they can corrode them very quickly. So we'll do one step at a time, and I'll show you how to do those steps. Okay, so I have added the bearings, and you can see I've put a small blob of solder on there, very small amount, but that won't come out now. So just make sure it rolls nice and smoothly, which it does. You can see I've adjusted the brake blocks on this side but not this side. They're still quite a way out. So once you sort of tacked the bearings in place, what I've done is used the wheels to hold them in place while soldering them, and not apply too much flux so I don't damage the wheels. So as you can see, the bearing does protrude about a millimetre from the front face of the W iron. So what I need to do is I need to find a small drill, so about 1.5 mil, and go about 1 mil into the casting of the axle box, and then glue them onto the front of the axle box, or I'll glue them onto the front of the W iron, sorry. And then after that I can add the rigging for the brakes. Okay, so since the last part I have now finished the rolling chassis. The wheels are in, the springs are on, the brakes are on, the white metal buffers are in place, as well as the etch coupling hook, which is or used to be from Mainly Trains, now from Wizard. Plus I've fitted the modified NEM box on the ends. I have fitted NEM pocket number 19 KDs just to check that they are in line with the buffer heads, which they are. I've also added the vacuum cylinder, which shouldn't be on this, but because it's a preservation layout I'm building and I've run in the past, it needs vacuum brakes, so that's been fitted, and also from MJT. I've still got to fit a battery box on the underneath, but that will come later, and plus also the braided vacuum pipes or steam pipes or whatever you want to call them on the ends of the carriage chassis. So that brings us to the conclusion of the end of this. It'll then go into painting and also some test runs to check it all works and runs okay. So join me in the next bit, which should be probably after Christmas sometime, where you can see the body being built and then fitted to the chassis, hopefully. So have a good Christmas and a new year, and we'll see you next year, hopefully.